And streaming platforms are giving fans a sneak peek of some much-anticipated shows, including a new Marvel series and a Korean adaptation of a Spanish heist crime drama. A clarification on the no vax, no ride policy in Metro Manila. The government says workers who have yet to take their COVID-19 shots can still use public transportation. The policy took effect yesterday and made it difficult for a number of commuters to get to work. Our Tristan Odalo joins us live. Tristan?
Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello clarifies that essential workers are exempted from the no vax, no ride policy. This means that unvaccinated workers should not be barred from riding public utility vehicles. The labor chief says the policy is, quote, non-absolute, and alert level 3 guidelines allow the movement of the unvaccinated but only for essential activities.
Po ang mga workers natin because they are rendering essential services. Pag tininto mo mga yan, paano gagalaw ang ating mga negosyo? Pag walang negosyo, walang ekonomiya. So luckily, exempted po ang ating mga workers.
The Transportation Department agrees with Bello and says unvaccinated workers must present proof that they're going to work by showing their company ID or certificate of employment. Transport officials say enforcers of the no vax, no ride policy are aware of the exemption, but some dispatchers in terminals say they have yet to be informed of the guidelines.
Sumasakay po. Hindi. Pag naniningil po kami, pinahanda namin vaccine card nila. Para pag singil namin, papakita po nila. Kasi pag wala pong vaccine card, pinapababa namin.
Land Transportation and Franchising and Regulatory Board Director Zona Tamayo tells CNN Philippines that they extend assistance to those who are rejected from using public transport that are not covered by the exemption.
Surprisingly, those po na hindi natin inalaw, agreed naman po. Some even volunteered to have their second dose already on yesterday. So we have to assist them, especially those along Commonwealth. We have to turn them over to the task force disciplina for them to be assisted for their vaccination. So relatively po, in general, the passengers who don't have that vaccination cards or are still not fully vaccinated understood the policy that we are now implementing for public transportation.
But calls to stop the no vax, no ride policy continue. Senator Kiko Pangilinan wants an end to what he calls a, quote, draconian policy that burdens the poor and those without their own vehicles. Former Senator Cheese Escudero also wants to scrap the policy, citing no legal grounds for it. Apart from workers, the Transportation Department adds that unvaccinated individuals or partially vaccinated individuals can still use public transport for buying groceries. Those with medical condition who cannot be vaccinated must show their medical certificates. And for unvaccinated workers who will have a hard time or encounter problems for public transportation, they can approach their leader of the enforcers and remind them of the exemptions. Back to you, Tia.
Tristan Odalo there reporting. The Health Department reporting 28,471 new COVID-19 infections, the first time in almost a week. The daily average falls below 30,000. Health Secretary Francisco Duque had said the COVID-19 growth rate in the country is slowing down. He explained the average daily reported cases only increased by 71%, with nearly 35,000 infections from January 11 to 17, compared to up to the 725% growth rate from December 28 to January 3, and the 689% increase the following week.
Nag-umpisa na magplato, Mr. President. But we still don't know kung sisipa pa ba ito muli or patuloy na magplato. Tapos hopefully bababa siya.
Duque, however, cautions the country is still at critical risk. The Health Department also says 18 provinces and cities under Alert Level 3 are showing an upward trend of COVID-19 cases, similar to the spike here in Metro Manila. We're showing you the list on your screens, most of them in the Visayas and Mindanao. Local governments in these areas are asked to prepare their health facilities as more people are expected to get sick because of low vaccine coverage of less than 40%. Meanwhile, provinces provinces under Alert Level 2 are asked to accelerate their vaccination efforts to reduce transmission and prevent hospitalization of patients in case of a spike. DOH data show Sulu, Maguindanao, Basilan, and Tawi-Tawi has less or have less than 20% vaccine coverage.
Ang pagtaas ng kaso sa ibang rehiyon ay hindi magiging isolated case. Ito po ay nakakaapekto sa lahat ng kalapit na rehiyon. Kasama po dyan ang NCR Plus at ang kabuuan ng Luzon na may mas malaking pagtaas ng kaso ngayon kumpara nung Delta experience natin noong September 2021.
Vaccination of children against COVID-19 will begin next month. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez says the plan is to vaccinate over 15 million children aged 5 to 11. 780,000 Pfizer vaccines formulated for that age group will arrive on January 31st. Another 1.6 million doses will be delivered on February 7th. The Food and Drug Administration says 3 manufacturers have also applied for emergency use authorization amendments for pediatric vaccination. These are Covaxin for 2 to 18 years old, Sinovac for 3 to 7 years old and 12 to 17 years, and Sinopharm for 3 to 7 years old. So far, there are now over 8 million vaccinated minors. The government is utilizing big pharmacies and private clinics to administer more COVID-19 booster doses. Officials say the Res Bakuna sa mga botika program will help ease pressure on vaccination sites manned by local governments and the Department of Health. At least 500,000 doses need to be administered daily in the country to achieve the target of giving boosters to 72 million Filipinos this year.
Mr. President, this is our way forward to hand over the responsibility of the vaccination from the national government center to its complete devolution to the LGUs and the private sector in the preparation for the future commercialization of the vaccine. So mangyayari po si Secretary Anyo at saka po ang private sector na po ang mamumuno po ng mga vaccination program po natin through the LGUs.
The pilot run will begin on Thursday in 7 locations across Metro Manila. You can see that list on your screens. Now, vaccine experts again stressing the importance of getting an additional COVID-19 vaccine dose as the highly contagious Omicron variant spreads rapidly. An infectious disease expert says a third shot can give protection as high as 93% against the virus and is up to 96% effective against hospitalization.
Nakikita namin ngayon yung mga nagka-severe. These are mostly unvaccinated. And there are a few of those who are fully vaccinated but has not received the booster. No? So doon talaga makikita mo yung disparity between getting the severe infection and getting the milder infection.
Persistence of antibody responses in the context of Omicron is still ongoing. So we still don't have definitive answers. Although there have been some suggestion na, the persistence of antibodies will be as same or longer than in the boosters will be the same or longer than those for the second dose. So we could expect a much longer protection compared to just having 2 doses.
Meanwhile, early data from Israel suggests a 4th dose of Pfizer or Moderna's vaccine can increase antibodies, but it may still not be enough to prevent breakthrough infections caused by Omicron. Researchers note that the level of antibodies needed against the variant may be too high for both vaccines, even if they still performed well. Last month, the Middle Eastern nation pioneered a trial of the additional booster in healthy participants ahead of its rollout to those more at risk of getting COVID-19. Now, despite being the early global leader in coronavirus vaccination, Israel is struggling to inoculate children. The vast majority of those under age 11 are still not immunized. And as CNN's Hadas Gold tells us, hospitals are seeing a surge in cases among the youth.
For months, this children's COVID ward at Sheba Hospital in central Israel sat empty. Now it's reopened, and nurses are suiting up again, as health experts estimate that COVID cases in children will soon surge to tens of thousands per day. Dr. Itai Pesach, director of the Safra Children's Hospital at Sheba, says that during the last wave, they had at their peak around 15 children in the COVID ward.
We already broke that number during this week, and I'm sure it's going to be higher because the rate of positive people and positive children around the country is still rising.
But something is different about this wave. Most of the kids in the COVID ward weren't admitted because of COVID.
We found them to be positive while we were treating them for other illnesses. So the COVID actually complicates a little bit the conditions. We have to care for them, but otherwise it poses no significant medical risk for them.
Dr. Pesach is especially worried about the long-term ramifications of so many positive cases. Children with even asymptomatic COVID infections sometimes develop a debilitating disorder called PIMS, Pediatric Inflammatory Multisystem Syndrome.
If Omicron does cause PIMS, the huge number of positive cases that we see would definitely bring a wave of PIMS later, and PIMS is a significant disorder. We know that the vaccine protects from PIMS in a very good way. So going back to the vaccine, if most of the kids were vaccinated, we wouldn't have to worry about what's going to happen in a month now.
But less than 15% of Israeli children aged 5 to 11 are vaccinated. As health officials try to get more life-saving shots into arms, the education system is soldiering on.
Here in Israel, we are absolutely sure that open schools are the best option, even under most difficult circumstances. And our policy is very clear: to keep schools open under any circumstances.
At the Gratz Elementary School in Tel Aviv, open windows for ventilation, masks, and a new kind of homework.
Because of an intense demand for testing, whether at home or performed by professionals, the Israeli government has decided to give each student in the education system 3 free at-home antigen tests.
The school's COVID coordinator, Marit Chaviv, can barely keep up with her students' positive tests and quarantines.
It's crazy. It's like a wave. It's a tsunami. It's not even just a regular wave. It's a real tsunami that just flushes everything. That's it.
But she agrees schools must stay open, despite the risks.
I think it would be easier to shut down schools, yes, but it's a problem. I'm a mother. I have 2 boys, and I know how hard for them it is to stay at home. And I think it's more important that the kids will stay in some kind of a regular routine, come back to school every day, see their friends, and I think it's much more important.
And so the children in Israel continue on, testing, and hoping that they can make it through the tsunami. Hadass Gold, CNN, Tel Aviv.
In other headlines overseas, Moderna should have data on a vaccine targeting Omicron by March, according to its CEO. The pharmaceutical firm also working on a single dose that covers both flu and COVID-19 to help address concerns about getting separate shots. Moderna isn't planning to have the combined dose ready until late next year, and even then, it will only be available in some countries. Australia reports its deadliest day since the pandemic began. The country listed at least 74 fatalities on Monday, including 36 in New South Wales, 16 in Queensland, and the rest in Victoria, which also saw record hospitalizations last week. Other states and territories have yet to report figures. Australia's previous record daily death toll was 57. Beijing vowing to join hands with the Philippines to resolve South China Sea disputes. Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi made the statement during the 5th Manila Forum for Philippines-China relations. Wang said issues should be addressed properly and not affect bilateral ties. Manila logged a flurry of diplomatic protests against Beijing last year, which continued to assert maritime claims in the West Philippine Sea, despite a 2016 Hague ruling invalidating them. Coming up on Newsnight, authorities identify a 4th inmate who bolted maximum security compound of the New Bilibid prison in Muntinlupa. And the poll body is set to begin printing the final ballots for the May elections. More when we return. back to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. The Bureau of Corrections reports another missing inmate of the New Bilibid prison and maybe among those who managed to escape on Monday. Our George Quiles joins us. George, what do we know about this fourth fugitive?
The Bureau of Corrections identified the fourth escapee as Chris Ablas, who was convicted for robbery with homicide. This means two convicts are still on the loose, Ablas and Dracilu Falcon. The Bucor describes these detainees as armed and dangerous. Yesterday, two of the inmates, Pacifico Adlawan and Arwin Bayo, were killed during a supposed encounter with authorities. Metro Manila Police Chief Major General Vic Danao has ordered an intensive manhunt operation, alerting all units on the ground to help in the immediate arrest of the remaining two. The Bucor has offered 100,000 peso bounty for information that would lead to the whereabouts of Ablas and Falcon. Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara wants to know how the inmates managed to escape the maximum security compound and how they were able to get firearms and other weapons. Guevara ordered the National Bureau of Investigation into the jailbreak. He also wants administrative sanctions against Bucor officials who will be found guilty of gross neglect of duty. Yeah.
George, speaking of the NBI, drug suspect Kerwin Espinosa also trying to escape from the agency's detention facility. What's the latest on this?
That's right, Pia. Justice Secretary Guevara says they will ask the court to transfer drug suspect Kerwin Espinosa to a facility with more stringent security, such as the Marine Barracks in Fort Bonifacio. The NBI earlier reported Espinosa and two other detainees planned to escape their detention facility through an air vent. Espinosa has been under the NBI's custody since his repatriation from the United Arab Emirates on 2016. Authorities asked the court to place Espinosa under the NBI's watch due to security risks, since his father, former Albuera Leyte Mayor Rolando Espinosa, was killed during a police operation inside the Leyte Provincial Jail in Baybay City, also in 2016. Back to you.
George Quiles there reporting. The Commission on Elections will still include the name of presidential aspirant former Senator Bongbong Marcos in the ballot for the 2022 polls, despite pending cases against his bid. COMELEC spokesperson James Jimenez says the poll body has already prepared the ballot phase for the elections. He notes there will be 10 presidential contenders, 9 vice presidential aspirants, 64 senatorial hopefuls, and 177 party lists on the ballot. COMELEC will begin the printing of over 67 million ballots this Wednesday and expects to finish the process by April. Poll body held a virtual walkthrough today.
Kung bibilangin po natin yung araw magmula ng January 20 ay hanggang mga first week of April lang po yan, kaya na sana. But again, we are realistic in anticipating contingencies, including na po yung COVID surge and infection of our workers.
COMELEC plans to help or to tap reserve workers should existing manpower go on quarantine because of COVID-19. Well, the Commission on Elections eyeing to stage national debates in February ahead of the 2022 polls. COMELEC spokesperson James Jimenez says the poll body is crafting a memorandum of understanding with aspirants for the ground rules.
We'll have one set of debates per month, February, March, and April. We'll have back-to-back debates, presidential and vice presidential debates, one after the other.
The COMELEC earlier said the debates will be under a hybrid setup. Candidates will attend in person and the audience will watch virtually. A look at what some presidential aspirants are up to. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno says the Manila Zoo will open its doors for the COVID vaccination of children and senior citizens tomorrow. Senator Manny Pacquiao reiterates the need to increase the minimum salary of health workers to 50,000 pesos a month. And the campaign against the return of the Marcoses and martial law or karma slammed former Senator Bongbong Marcos after he pledged to increase the funding of the anti-communist task force. Karma says his father, former President Ferdinand Marcos, also used the military and tactics such as red tagging to maintain his dictatorial rule. Bongbong has yet to respond, or the younger Marcos has yet to respond to the group's statement. Straight-ahead golf star Yuka Saso is set to wear Japan's colors in her next tournament, and we get a preview of some exciting new shows, including South Korea's take on Netflix's Money Heist. Keep it here on CNN Philippines. Welcome back to CNN Philippines. The Philippine Basketball Association is set to hold a board meeting next week to decide on the fate of its season-ending Governor's Cup. The Import Lace Conference was put to a halt last January 3rd. Under Alert Level 3, sports leagues are prohibited from staging live games except those under a full bubble setup. But PBA Commissioner Willie Marshall is hopeful they can resume under a home venue home scheme after getting the nod of the Games and Amusements Board.
Kausap ko si Chairman Mitra last Sunday morning na sinabi niya na nag-endorse na sila ng letter sa IATF na payagan tayo maglaro ng tinatawag din ng Type C bubble, yung home venue home. Malamang sa tumataas itong Omicron na to, tapos kung papalarin tayo magsimula, sigurado magdadagdag tayo ng mga protocols at pagsasabihan natin ng mga players, pati baka mga penalties, mga fines, baka may mga dadagdag tayo, itataas tayo.
Overseas, the Ladies Professional Golf Association, or LPGA, now recognizing Yuka Saso as a Japanese athlete. The reigning U.S. Women's Open champion previously had dual citizenship and represented the Philippines, but Saso chose to become a Japanese citizen last year. The LPGA website now features the Japanese flag alongside the athlete's name. Meanwhile, tennis champion Novak Djokovic may miss out on more global tournaments, including the next Madrid Open. The Spanish Prime Minister says any athlete competing there must comply with Spain's health rules. This was echoed by France, meaning the tennis star may also be barred from the French Open. Djokovic was recently deported from Australia for being unvaccinated against COVID-19. With this, he was unable to defend his Australian Open title. And catching netizens' attention, streaming platforms are giving fans a glimpse of some much-anticipated shows. Marvel fans, take a look at this newly unveiled poster for Moon Knight, starring Oscar Isaac. The trailer, also released today, hints at a darker, thrilling series set for streaming on Disney Plus, March 30th.
There's chaos in you.
Plus, an exciting teaser for the Korean adaptation of the hit Netflix series Money Heist. The video that has since gone viral reveals the show's title, Money Heist Korea Joint Economic Area. Here's a sneak peek. The teaser also shows off some cast members. Squid Game's Park Hae-soo plays Berlin, while Yoo Ji-tae takes on the role of the professor. And before we go, movie award season ramping up overseas. CNN's David Daniel has the latest in the Hollywood Minute.
Where is it?
Where is who?
Your boss.
My boss. Clearly, you don't know me.
Big wins for The Harder They Fall. The Western took top honors at the African American Film Critics Association Awards, winning Best Picture, Best Ensemble, Best Director, and Best Music. King Richard also received 4 honors from the group: Best Actor for Will Smith, Best Supporting Actress for Ingenue Ellis, Breakout Actor for Sanaya Sidney, and Best Emerging Director. The awards will be presented at a March 2nd ceremony in Los Angeles.
25 years since our first run together. 1900 and nothing.
Meanwhile, The Power of the Dog won Best Picture honors from the North Dakota Film Critics. That's notable because it's the Netflix film's 21st Best Picture prize, breaking the streamer's previous record of 20, set by 2018's Roma. No Netflix film has yet won the Oscar for Best Picture.
We don't talk about Bruno, no.
Apparently, they do talk about Bruno in the United Kingdom. We Don't Talk About Bruno from Encanto leads the UK's official chart update and is one of 3 Encanto songs set to hit the UK Top 20 Singles chart when it's updated on Friday. In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
And that is it for tonight. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. Helping Filipinos navigate through a raging pandemic and now seeking answers from the Commission on Elections over an alleged data breach. Vice President Leni Robredo juggles her time to personally address these top-of-mind national concerns while making her case to the Filipino people to bid or in a bid for the highest position in the land come May 9th, 2022. We now have the Vice President herself for an up-close interview here on Newsnight. Good evening, ma'am, and thank you very much for joining us. Let's begin with this, the pandemic, of course, that is really top of mind. We understand that you don't like the or appreciate the government policy of no vaccination, no ride. As a matter of fact, you say what is important is to ramp up vaccination. What we need to do is to inform and incentivize. Can you explain more about that?
You know, Pia, we have been having Vaccine Express in many parts of the country. And from our experience, hindi kailangan takutan eh. From our experience, kailangan mo lang talagang tiyagaan to educate people. You have to make sure that yung vaccination accessible to them. And pangatlo, talagang to incentivize. I will give you a very specific example. We did the vaccination in Capas Tarlac for the Aita community. Before we went, we were already being warned that ayaw ng Aita community magpabakuna. Pero when we went, talagang we worked with the local government unit, sinundo sila, nagbigay kami ng mga food packs, nagbigay kami ng mga other incentives. And you know, the turnout was very, very good. And we have not just done that in Capas, but we have been doing that elsewhere. So para sa akin, dapat sana yung vaccination, hindi siya lalabas na paparusahan ka kung hindi ka bakunado. Pero talagang we go out of our way and exert our best effort to really educate, to really bring the vaccination where people are and provide incentives.
You brought up this issue about bringing the vaccination to people, no? And that is something I remember in late December when I interviewed Charlie Galvez, and he was saying that that could be a logistical challenge for the LGUs in lalo na sa far-flung areas. Can you talk about that?
Totoong logistical challenge siya, Pia, pero government should not do it alone. Our Vaccine Express initiatives, we were able to do a lot of things because we have been partnering with the private sector. Sa amin, Pia, hindi siya naging mahirap. Hindi siya naging mahirap because all our initiatives has really been a collaboration, not just between our office and the private sector, but also with the local government unit.
Okay. Ma'am, about a week, was that a week or 2 weeks ago, I remember you were very upset with allegations on social media that one of your daughters had skipped or cut quarantine or something or other. And also, after Christmas, before New Year's, ang daming nagalit doon sa Poblacion Girl and yung isa pa, no? Pero nakasuhan din naman yung dalawa. The question here is, how should we move forward on something like this when there are, alleged blatant disregard for the rules? How do we appeal to Filipinos, to our citizens, to, parang integrity yan eh. Pwede na, integrity is what you do even when no one is looking, right?
Ito, Pia, dapat natuto tayo from the lessons na yung Poblacion Girl incident gave us. Nung sumabog yon, marami yung naglabasan. Apparently, it has been happening already. So gusto ko sabihin, may problema tayo sa implementation. Kasi yung protocols naman are in place. Kaya sa akin, Pia, kailangan we should have learned from that lesson kasi it was very costly for us. So yung sa akin, halimbawa, ito personal experience, Pia, na yung mga anak ko traveled from the US, dumating sila on the 20th, na-swab sila on the 24th, lumabas yung kanilang results on the 25th. Sa tatlo kong anak, isa yung nag-positive. So my daughter was telling me na tinawagan siya ng Bureau of Quarantine. The protocols were explained to her. Ang advice sa kanya, isolation facility. So klaro yung mga protocols. So after checking out of the hotel, she went straight to the isolation facility. And nung nasa isolation facility, meron mga protocols in place. She was still required to do home quarantine for another 6 days. So kung nasusunod lang sana ito, Pia, maayos lahat. Halimbawa yung sa anak ko, walang nahawa in the family. Na-control yung spread of the virus. The main reason why nangyari yung Poblacion Girl incident, kasi may nagsiskip ng protocols na kung hindi sumabog, hindi ma-reveal yung mga gaps in the implementation.
Which is also why kinasuhan na nga several people and groups. No, but ma'am, my last question before we go to a break, if you were to win the election, what is the first thing you would do to address the pandemic on day one, June 30? Minutes after taking your oath, for example, if you were to win?
Ako, Pia, talagang yung pinaka-first agenda is freedom from COVID. If we are able to control the transmission of the virus, it will set everything else in motion. So, eto yung first major step towards full recovery. And then we need to ensure the availability of jobs and livelihoods as we begin to make our way forward in the new normal. I think in mid-November, we put out our kalayaan sa COVID plan already. And in December, we put out our Hanap Buhay para sa lahat. It's available sa lennyrobredo.com. And yung sinasabi natin, the core principle of this plan is ensuring that progress is felt in the communities. And really that begins with jobs. Yung kalayaan sa COVID, kabahagi doon yung getting the economy back on its feet, making sure that the healthcare system will be resilient moving forward. And yung education, grabe yung damage to the education of our children. 2 years na, Pia. 2 years na hindi talaga nakakapasok yung marami sa ating mga So talagang ito yung mga priorities natin.
And since elections na pinag-usapan, ma'am, let's jump from the pandemic to politics. But we're going to do that after taking this very short break. Keep it here on CNN Philippines. Welcome back. This is Up Close with presidential aspirant VP Leni Robredo. Ma'am, Vice President, I remember the April 2016 CNN Philippines VP debate. You said, and I paraphrase, I will be...
In the last 5.5 years that I was Vice President, and nakatayo pa din ako ngayon, Pia. At lumalaban pa din.
Is, in your estimation, is Bongbong Marcos some sort of a Teflon candidate? Kasi parang ang dami ng binato sa kanya, kaya pa rin, nangunguna pa rin sa survey.
Ano kasi, Pia, it's many different things. Unang-una, yung kanyang effort to really revise the way people, parang to really, not just history, not just to really revise history, pero pabanguhin yung pagtingin ng tao sa mga Marcoses. Yung initiative na to, ginawa way back, even before he ran for the vice presidency. And over the years, relentless talaga yung effort na gawin yon. And ngayon, nire-reap niya yung benefits noon. Naon niya talaga yung social media, Pia. In fact, it's one of the more difficult challenges that we are facing. Because alam natin, sobrang dami ng fake accounts ngayon. Alam natin na social media is working on algorithms. So nasa-saturate talaga yung mga distribution channels na yung tao hindi na nabibigyan ng enough na opportunity to really know what is right and what is wrong. So kailangan doble talaga yung effort to make it known to people what is true and what is not.
Do you think, or should he be disqualified, or do you want him disqualified? Because many of those who believe in you and will vote for you want him disqualified for reasons that were used to file those DQ cases against him or the petitions to cancel his COC. Or do you want to slug it out with him this May 2022? I remember you said you wanted na yung kalabanin talaga siya.
Ako Pia, ayoko mag-comment dun sa disqualification case, but if you were to ask me, mas gusto ko talunin natin siya sa eleksyon para matapos na ito.
Mas gusto niyong talunin siya sa eleksyon. Anong matapos na ito? Ano yung ito doon?
Yung narrative kasi, Pia, kung naalala mo, yung narrative, kung naalala mo, nung natalo ko siya sa eleksyon, dahil inuun niya yung social media, ang daming naniniwala na dinaya ko siya. Kahit ilang beses pa ako nanalo sa Supreme Court, ito yung narrative na pinupush niya. So kailangan talagang talunan siya sa susunod na eleksyon para once and for all, mahinto na yung ginagawa niya na pagpapapaniwala sa tao nung narrative na gusto niyang i-push.
Are there any regrets, ma'am, at this point in time that the four of you, Ping Lacson, Isko Moreno, and Manny Pacquiao, didn't get your act together in a way, or didn't unite, hindi kayo nag-solidify?
I would have to admit I was frustrated at first because I was very hopeful. I was very hopeful when I started talking to the many different candidates na we would unite behind one common candidate. Pero regret siguro, Pia, hindi. Kasi I exerted all effort. And after the talks failed, to a very large extent, I was successful in uniting not the presidential candidates, but the very many groups that are behind our candidacy now. Maraming ngayon mga volunteers, Pia, na iba-iba yung pinanggalingan. So sabi ko, if I was not able to unite the presidential candidates, at least ito, yung tao, yung sinusubukan natin na i-unite pang lalo.
Pag-usapan natin sandali lang yung kampanya because there was this announcement that you have this new campaign slogan. So very briefly talk about that, but at the same time talk about that previous effort to kumbaga juxtapose you against President Duterte as the Tatay Digong, and then you were going to be the para bang mother figure, the nanay, the ina. But that didn't work out ba?
Yung naging problema namin when we started was that we were not prepared for the deluge of volunteers. And nung nagkaroon ng onslaught of volunteers, our first decision was to give them as much elbow room as possible, as much independence as possible to chart the kind of campaign that they want. Yun sana yung gusto natin, really to make it an honest to goodness people's movement. Pero yung naging problema lang nun, Pia, kasi dahil iba-iba yung pinanggalingan ng mga grupo, kanya-kanya din yung messaging na ginagawa. So yung nanay was an initiative of one group, yung Let Lenny Lead was an initiative of another group. Iba-iba yung mga messaging na pinupush. So ang nangyari dito, parang ang observation, naging sobrang mixed yung signals, diluted yung messaging. That is why in December, we had to decide on just one that will encapsulate everything that we want to convey.
Okay. In the middle of this investigation that's going to happen on this alleged COMELEC hacking incident, are you still confident about the elections? Because as a candidate, you submit yourself to the process, to the system. You won in 2016. It's practically the same system. So, andyan pa po ba yung kumpiyansa ninyo?
It's worrying. I have to admit, Pia, na it's worrying. That's why the first day that we learned of an alleged hacking incident, naglabas kami ng statement ni Senator Kiko urging COMELEC to conduct a full-blown investigation and to really ensure na yung integrity ng system is in place. Kasi gaya na sabi mo, syempre cause for worry siya kung na-hack ito kasi unang-una kung i-hack ano yung dahilan. So kung ang dahilan is to meddle with the with the integrity of the elections, it is worrying not just for us candidates pero syempre for the electorate. Kasi yung gusto lang naman natin masiguro na yung boses ng tao yung madadala. So yung sa akin, it is enough reason for us to stay vigilant. Kailangan talagang tutukan natin yung buong proseso just to make sure na kung ano yung will ng tao, yun yung lalabas during the elections.
Yes, that is the most important. Ma'am, we have a minute to go, and I know this may not sound like a very fair question to you, but it's so important, especially because people's attention spans are so short, and we don't always have the luxury of time to explain everything. But there are three big things here. One, the economy, reviving the economy. Two, the war on corruption and the war on drugs, which were the centerpieces of the Duterte administration. So my question here would be, and if you can, put it in one minute capsule, what is it that you're going to do in the first 100 days? One, to revive the economy. Two, to I'm sure you want to continue this war on corruption. And three, how are you going to reimagine this war on drugs?
Ako yung number one, Pia, naglabas na ako yung hanap buhay para sa lahat and kalayaan sa COVID plan. Nandun yung lahat na detalye. But at the core of a more long-term view, yun yung gagawin ko. Meron na ako nito ng point by point, step by step, kung paano gagawin. But the war on drugs should be pursued with as much vigor. Pero absent what has been happening now na maraming patayan.
Vice President Leni Robredo, presidential aspirant for May 2022. Ma'am, thank you so much for the time you gave us tonight. Salamat po, ma'am.
Thank you, Pia.